He cheated on her. He abused her. He insulted her because she was an orphan with no one to protect her. And when she finally gathered the courage to confide in her father-in-law, hoping for support, her husband turned even more ruthless. He didn't just throw her out, he abandoned her at a garbage site saying, "This is where you belong." But what Bio never realized was that the very place he discarded her would mark the turning point of her life. Someone was watching, and that someone would change her story forever. This isn't only a story of betrayal, it's a journey of survival, resilience, and justice. So sit back, relax, and watch closely, because what you're about to see will leave you speechless. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up so you don't miss a moment of this unforgettable story. This marriage was never born from love. It was built on contracts and credit. Long before the wedding was arranged, Chief Jid, Skola's only surviving relative, summoned her to the parlor of his Ikoi duplex and declared, almost like reading out business terms, that she would marry Bofei. "The union will secure my deal with Chief Femi," he said, tapping his calculator. As an orphan, Shola had neither dowry nor anyone to defend her. She nodded silently, because nodding was safer than questioning. No one had ever asked for her opinion on her own life. She would marry a stranger, not by choice or happiness, but by obedience. On the appointed Saturday, she stood in the side alcove of the cathedral, a borrowed veil trembling in her nervous hands. There were no bridesmaids, only Chief Jid whispering urgently with Chief Femi a few pews away. The stained glass saints, glowing in the morning light, seemed to turn away at the sound of checks being torn. The groom arrived 15 minutes late, smelling faintly of champagne and pride. He glanced at Skola just long enough to confirm she was there, then winked at his friends by the rear door. The organist, uncertain when to begin, stumbled on a chord before starting the processional. The ceremony moved forward awkwardly like a reluctant mule. When the priest asked if anyone knows a reason why these two should not be joined, silence filled the cathedral until Skola's own voice, small but clear, slipped out. I do," gasps echoed through the marble hall. Chief Jid's nails pressed crescents into her arm. "You will not ruin my business," he whispered harshly. Her cheeks lost color, and obedience, an orphan's oldest instinct, silenced her once again. 5 painful seconds later, the priest, red with confusion, continued as if nothing had happened. In that moment, holy vows felt more like a business transaction. Outside, confetti filled the air, masking the tremor in Skola's hands. The photographer asked for a smile, and she forced a grimace that looked in hindsight like proof of life. Bio accepted congratulations while checking his reflection in the limousine window, already disinterested in the spectacle. That first night, tropical dusk fell quickly on Victoria Island. Bio's stark white duplex overlooking the lagoon welcomed its new mistress with silent corridors and locked cupboards. In the master bedroom, he tossed a scarlet silk nightgown across the bed. "Wear something respectable tomorrow," he said, unclasping his cufflinks. "I cannot introduce you to people looking like charity." Skola, trained to say thank you even for scraps, folded the gown with careful hands, though it cut her dignity like barbed wire. Days blurred into a sequence of small humiliations. A fork was slammed down because a meal tasted wrong. A couture dress was torn from her shoulders for supposedly damaging his reputation. A phone was smashed when she tried to call the seamstress who had been kind to her during fittings. Each apology she received felt progressively smaller until she could barely say her own name. When loneliness became unbearable, Shalola began a diary, thin pages soaked with blue ink and quiet tears. She recorded the bystanders who watched but did nothing, the veil she wore, and a husband who called her an asset in public and baggage in private. In one entry, she wrote what she dared not say aloud: "I have married a vacancy masquerading as a man." Outside the house, life moved on. Lagoon breezes, smoke from street grills, laughter from beach bars, while inside the windows clicked shut each evening as Bao performed his ritual of possession. Each bolt slid home like a final punctuation mark. The house had 15 sash windows that might once have framed sunrise over the lagoon. Instead, Bao turned every latch, saying, "Security is tight on the island," as he pocketed the key. The real prison was the certainty she would never be allowed to leave on her own terms. Bao's routine became law. On Mondays, he rose early to jog and returned to complain the bathroom smelled too feminine, Tuesdays he sampled dinner and judged it either bland or too spicy, then swept the plate away. Wednesdays he stayed out texting, business drinks don't wait up. Thursdays he came home with unfamiliar perfume and club music in his head. Fridays were worst. He returned drunk, armed with insults born in barrooms. Shalola tallied these moments in the margins of her diary like marks on a wall. June 3rd, he snapped over fingerprints on a glass. June 10th, he mocked her voice. June 24th, he asked if orphans know how to love. Each entry ended with the same careful question. What is the price of silence? She never wrote the answer. One evening, while steam filled the ensuite, Shalola reached for her uncle's number with a trembling thumb. The call connected on the fourth ring. "Uncle, it's me," she said. After a distracted pause, he asked why she called during business hours. "Bao, he hurts me. I think I may die here." Chief Jed clicked his tongue. "A woman endures. Men test their wives. Stay valuable to him. Your husband's deal depends on your attitude." When she told him Bao locked her in and raised his hand, he cut her off. "Marriages are never perfect. Don't embarrass me with melodrama. Stay in your home and be grateful he provides." The line went dead. Skolola hid the phone under a sofa cushion, wiped her tears and forced calm before Biao emerged wrapped in a towel, smelling of expensive oils and entitlement. He declared supper inedible, ate anyway, then returned to his evening. That Friday a storm darkened the sky. Biao came home after midnight with vodka on his breath and lipstick on his collar. Skolola asked quietly for caution, not fidelity. "Use protection. We might both die of your carelessness." He laughed and struck her. The beating ended with him throwing her against the banister. She lay curled until dawn. When he slept, she gathered herself, slipped into a faded wrapper and left before courage dissolved. Her shoes were locked in a wardrobe. Her feet found the driveway stones by impulse. Rain began heavy and relentless. She almost hailed a taxi but kept walking. At Chief Jed's gates, 2 security guards looked at the drenched, swollen-faced woman with skepticism. She told them, "Please, Shola is here." They radioed inside. Minutes passed beneath the downpour before Chief Jed emerged under an umbrella, immaculate in silk pajamas. He lowered his voice. "Neighbors will talk. Go home. Uncle, just one night, please. I fear he'll kill me. That is a wife's cross," he snapped. "You chose him." The umbrella shielded him while the rain soaked her. The gates closed. Skolola staggered back into the rain, her heart breaking with each step. By dawn, she reached Victoria Island and found the front door locked from within. Too weak to climb the wall, she sank onto the welcome mat. At sunrise, the door opened impatiently. Bao stepped out, phone to his ear, already mid-call about sales targets. He glanced at her like a stray object. "You look wretched. Clean yourself before the neighbors wake." He stepped over her and shut the door. Skolola remained on the mat, numb, watching the pink sky fade and wondering for the first time whether death might be kinder than surviving this life. A stray kitten wandered near, mewing softly. She touched its damp fur and whispered, "We are both unwanted, aren't we?" The kitten purred, proof that gentleness could still exist even after cruelty. Inside, the morning sun climbed, reflecting off the 15 windows like prison mirrors. For Skolola, dawn did not bring freedom, but the reminder that escaping would take more than courage. It would require a way out she could not yet imagine. She had never thought marriage would teach her the biology of fear. Yet in Bio's house, even the simplest things carried hidden threats. She learned to flinch at the sound of ice in a glass, to measure his footsteps, light when sober, heavy when drunk. She knew when to hold her breath and when to pretend to sleep. But the fear pressing against her ribs was no longer about bruises or broken dishes. It was about infection. She discovered it by chance. One quiet morning, while gathering his laundry, a crumpled pharmacy receipt slipped from his trousers. Her eyes scanned the items. Azithromycin, cefixime, metronidazole. Her hands shook. These were no vitamins, but antibiotics used for sexually transmitted infections. Her heart sank. Sitting on the edge of the bed with the receipt clenched in her fist, she stayed frozen for an hour, unsure whether to weep, confront, or pray. She chose prayer. Kneeling by the bed, she whispered, "God, I don't know what to do, but I don't want to die. Not like this." That evening, she prepared Bio's favorite meal, grilled turkey wings, yam porridge, and peppered snails. She even wore a yellow floral wrapper, one of the few he had spared. Bio arrived at 10:40 p.m., slightly drunk, reeking of whiskey and another woman's perfume. Still, Shkolola greeted him softly, helping him remove his jacket. He slumped into a chair, tasting the food before nodding. Not bad. You didn't ruin it today. She forced a faint smile. After he ate, she brought water and sat across from him, hands twisted tightly on her lap. Her voice came out in a whisper. Bio, can we talk? He looked up, irritation already forming. About what? I know you see other women, she said carefully. I'm not here to fight or control you. I only want us to be safe, his brow creased. Safe how? I found the pharmacy receipt. I know you're treating something. Please just use protection, so we don't endanger each other's lives. Silence filled the room. Then he laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that cut through her plea. You, a gutter girl, advising me about protection? He shoved back the chair and stood. Who do you think you are? I'm your wife, she answered gently, tears rising. And I don't want to die, Bio, that's all I ask, just to be careful. His eyes darkened. Ungrateful wretch, then came the explosion. His slap hit her left cheek with such force she crashed to the tiled floor. Blood filled her mouth. He kicked her ribs, dragged her up by the wrist. You think you're wise now? Talking like my equal? She begged him to stop, shielding her face, but rage blinded him. When he finally ended, her vision blurred, her head pounding. He hurled her across the living room like discarded trash and stormed upstairs, cursing their marriage. Shkolola lay there for hours, unable to move or cry. The pain was not only physical but spiritual. She felt discarded, unworthy. She thought of her parents, faces barely remembered, and wondered what they would say now. Eventually, she crawled to the bathroom, cleaned her wounds with cold water, biting a towel to suppress her screams. Staring at her swollen, bloodied face in the mirror, she whispered, Is this what marriage means? She did not sleep that night. Curled in a corner, arms around her knees, she stayed awake until dawn. Her diary lay open beside her. With trembling hands, she wrote, He said I was lucky to have him, but luck should not feel like dying slowly. I asked for protection. I received a lesson in power. This house has no windows, only mirrors. In each, I see a stranger. By morning, her face throbbed, her ribs ached. She moved slowly, a shadow of herself. Bio had left early as usual, slamming the door without a word of apology. By mid-afternoon, she sat quietly on the couch, pressing a warm towel to her cheek. The doorbell rang. Through the curtain, she saw Chief Femi, Bio's father. Her heart raced. In all her months of marriage, he had never come unannounced. She opened the door with trembling hands. Good afternoon, Daddy, she said softly. His sharp gaze fixed on her face. What happened to you? He asked firmly. Nothing, sir. Don't lie. Who did this? Tears welled. Talk to me, Shkolola. At last the words poured out. She told him of the insults, beatings, infidelity, and fear. She told him everything, except her silence, which had cost her more than words could. Chief Femi stood still, stunned. When she finished, he was quiet for several moments before sighing deeply. Thank you for telling me. You've done nothing wrong. Then he turned and left. That evening, Bio came home earlier than usual, his eyes full of anger. You went and reported me to my father? He barked. Shkolola went still. You want to ruin me, Abi? You want him to cut me off from the company? She asked. I didn't tell him to punish you, she added softly. He only said, he asked. I only answered. Bio's breathing shook. He didn't hit her, not that time, but his silence felt like a blow. For days he hardly spoke. He left each morning without a word and returned late. She heard him slamming things in the guest room. Something was coming. She sensed it. Then one evening he acted. It was Saturday and the rain hammered the roof. Shkolola was in the kitchen stirring soup when she heard Bio call her. She dried her hands and went to the sitting room. In the middle of the room sat her old Ghana bag, the one she brought when she first moved in after the wedding, beside a pile of her oldest, most tattered clothes. What's this? She asked. You're leaving, Bio said flatly. You don't belong here anymore. What? She repeated. You heard me. Get out, she shook her head. Bio, please, where will I go? That's not my problem, he snapped. You think you can go crying to my father and stay? Nonsense. He grabbed the bag and shoved the ragged clothes in. Old wrappers, worn slippers, threadbare nightgowns. None of the clothes he'd bought her were included. Take only what you came with, he said. He opened the door. Move! Bio, please, she cried, but he seized her arm, dragged her into the rain, and pushed her toward the car. She sat in the back seat, drenched and shivering, tears mixing with the storm. They drove 30 minutes out of Victoria Island along Lagos back roads. Skolola had no idea where they were going. Finally, Bio stopped near a garbage dump, the Olua refuge site where trash bags rotted under makeshift signs. The place reeked. He stepped out, opened her door, and pulled her out. This is where you belong, he said. Trash among trash. She stumbled and fell into the mud beside broken bottles and a torn takeaway. Her bag hit the ground. Tell my father thank you for the disgrace, he added, then got into the car and sped off, tires squealing. Shalola sat soaked and stunned. For the first time she understood what it meant to be discarded, not merely left behind but thrown away. Flies buzzed. A rat darted between bins. A child scavenging watched her curiously. She tried to stand, but pain shot through her leg. Her cries were quiet now, as if her voice had given up. She curled against a wall of old tires, holding her bag like a shield. God, if you're watching, I don't have strength anymore, she whispered. A car's headlights appeared through the rain. It slowed and stopped. A tall man in a spotless white coat stepped out holding an umbrella. His eyes met hers without turning away. He walked carefully toward her, avoiding puddles, and crouched down. Young lady, he said in a calm, deep voice. Who did this to you? Skolola tried to answer, but no words came. The man looked at her kindly and helped her to her feet. I don't know what you've done, he said softly, but no one deserves to be thrown away like this. He signaled to his driver and introduced himself. My name is Amecha. You'll be all right, he added. That night marked the turning point in her life. Not with fireworks or revenge, but with a stranger's kindness in a Lagos rain. Amecha steadied her. Her legs were weak, soaked and bruised, but his support was steady. The scene felt unreal for a moment. The smell of rotting garbage and the sting in her cheek proved it was real. Please, Amecha said, noticing her shaking hands. Let me help you. Skolola tried to speak but could only manage a croak. He didn't wait for permission. Open the back door, he told his driver, then told her, You're coming home with me. Minutes later, she was inside a black Lexus SUV. The warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. She sat silently, clutching her torn bag. Her clothes were soaked, her hair matted, and her dignity in pieces. But for the first time in what felt like forever, no one yelled at her, no one raised a hand. No one demanded obedience, only quiet and care. Amecha glanced at her from the front seat. You don't need to explain now. Let's get you dry and fed. She turned her face toward the window, a tear slipping down her cheek, not from pain this time, but from the rare feeling of safety. They arrived at a mansion in Aoyi. Tall white walls, neatly sculpted hedges, and bright security lights surrounded the estate. The gates opened slowly, revealing a modern masterpiece with wide marble steps, elegant columns, and a perfectly kept lawn. Skolola blinked in disbelief. She expected the guards to stop them, perhaps to say, She's dirty, sir. Don't bring her inside. But instead they bowed respectfully as the car passed. At the entrance, the maid, Mama Oya, a warm woman in her 50s with kind eyes, greeted them. She gasped when she saw Shalola and stepped forward. Jesu Oga, what happened to her? She was thrown out like trash, Amecha said, his voice calm but heavy. Help her clean up, feed her. Make sure she rests tonight. Yes, sir, Mama Oya replied quickly, guiding Skolola inside. Before she disappeared up the stairs, Amecha called softly. You're safe now. No one will hurt you here. That night, Shalola had her first proper bath in weeks. Mama Oya filled a freestanding tub with warm water and helped her wash gently, humming Yoruba hymns. She dressed her in a cotton nightgown and led her to a guest suite larger than Sholola's entire home. The bed was soft and high, the air scented with lavender and fresh linen. On the nightstand, a small bowl of jollof rice, fried plantain, and grilled chicken waited. Skolola stared at the food. Her stomach growled, but she hesitated. Eat, Mama Oya urged. Oga said you must. Slowly, Shalola took a bite. And then she wept. She hadn't cried when Bio slapped her. She hadn't cried when her uncle shut the gate on her. Not even when she was abandoned on the street. But now, in a quiet room with warm food and kind eyes watching her, she broke down. Every sob felt like poison leaving her body. Mama Oya simply held her hand in silence. The next morning, Amecha returned. He found her sitting by the window, gazing at the garden. "You slept well?" he asked gently. "Yes, thank you," she whispered. "Are you ready to talk?" She nodded and, through tears, told him everything. How she was forced into marriage like a bargaining chip, endured verbal abuse in isolation, and was finally thrown out like waste. She spoke of begging her uncle only to be told to endure, of living like a ghost until even that ghost was discarded. Amecha listened without interrupting, without judgment. He didn't tell her she should have left earlier or call her weak. He simply listened, his eyes full of compassion. When she finished, she looked down. "I must sound weak to you." "I had nowhere else to go," he shook his head. "No, you sound like a woman who survived hell." "That's not weakness, that's strength." He paced slowly. "I've built my business on timing, knowing when to hold, when to act, when to walk away. But what I saw yesterday shook me. A woman treated like waste in a nation that should know better." Sholola wiped her eyes. "Thank you for saving me." "I didn't save you," Emeka replied. "I saw a treasure in the wrong place. I want to help you, not out of pity, but because you deserve better. Your story isn't over." Later that day, Amecha called his lawyer. "Look into the man who did this to her," he said. "His name is Bof. Find out who owns his house. I don't want revenge unless the law requires it. But I won't let this end in silence." When he told Shalola about his plan, she shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I don't want revenge. I only want peace. Let him live his life and I'll live mine." Emeka looked at her with quiet awe. Forgiveness, true forgiveness, was rare in a world built on retaliation. Yet here was a woman, wounded but unbroken, with a heart that refused to harden. "I've never met anyone like you," he said, and in that moment he made a silent vow. Whatever it took, he would give her the life she had been denied, not as charity, but as justice with grace. One morning, Amecha stepped onto his balcony and froze. Skalola was kneeling by his Lexus, scrubbing the rims. She wore one of Mama Oya's oversized wrappers, her hair tied in a scarf, humming softly as she worked. He descended the stairs, approaching quietly. "Shola, what are you doing?" Startled, she almost tipped the bucket. "Good morning, sir. You shouldn't be washing cars. You're not a maid." She stood, wiping her hands. "I know, I'm not doing this because I must. I'm doing it because I'm grateful. You've done enough. You deserve rest." Skalola smiled faintly. "Rest doesn't fill my heart the way work does. At least this way I feel like I'm giving back." Mecha studied her closely. There were still traces of pain in her eyes. Yet beneath it lived a quiet resilience, strength that no hardship could erase. "All right," he said at last. "But next time let the staff handle it. You've done enough for today." She nodded gently. "Yes, sir." Later that day, Mecha canceled a business lunch. He sat at the dining table in his home as Sholola set down a steaming plate before him. Vegetable soup, pounded yam, and grilled tilapia, seasoned with crayfish and bitter leaf. "I wasn't sure if you like spicy food," she admitted nervously. He took a bite, then another. Setting his fork down, he leaned back, astonished. "This is incredible." Her cheeks warmed. "Thank you. Mamo taught you this?" he asked. "No," she replied softly. "I used to cook a lot for him." Mecha didn't need to ask who him was. "And he still treated you that way?" he said quietly. Skalola shrugged. "When someone doesn't value you, it doesn't matter what you do." A silence fell, heavy but not uncomfortable. "I value this," he said, lifting his fork again. "And I value you." She looked up, startled. He meant it. That evening they sat in the garden as the sun dipped low, painting the grass in gold. Skalola sipped zobo while Mecha shared stories of his youth, how he once sold brake pads in Onitsha before growing his first shipping business. He told her about losing his mother at 16, a wound that hardened him. "I never let anyone close after that," he admitted. "Business was my shield. And now?" she asked. "Now I'm beginning to see that healing doesn't come from walls, it comes from people." She lowered her eyes. "I'm still broken." "No," he said firmly. "You're mending. Choosing gentleness after all you've endured, that is strength." The hush of evening surrounded them. Birds sang. Leaves whispered. "I never thought I'd feel peace again," she whispered. Mecha leaned closer. "I want you to have more than peace. I want you to have joy." 1 week turned into 2, then 3. Each morning Sholola watered the flowers, polished the furniture, made fresh juice, and laughed with Mama O. Sometimes she read books from the study. Each evening, Mecha found reasons to sit with her on the balcony near the koi pond, talking about everything and nothing: politics, music, recipes, forgiveness. Slowly, his heart began to change. This wasn't pity, nor obligation. This was love, unforced, unexpected, pure. On the 24th day, over breakfast under the gazebo, Mecha's expression turned serious. "Shkolola," he said, "I have something to share. I don't want you to feel pressured, but I need to be honest." She looked up, her heart racing. "I never planned to feel this way, but you've awakened something in me. You remind me of who I was before wealth and power defined everything. You bring peace into spaces where I once only chased performance. You've shown me that strength is quiet, not loud." She blinked, searching for words. "I know you're still healing," he continued, reaching into his pocket. "I'm not asking you to erase the past. I'm asking if you'll let me build a future with you." He opened a small velvet box, inside a simple gold band. Her hands flew to her mouth. "You want to marry me?" "Yes," he said steadily. "Not because I rescued you, but because I see you. I respect you. I love you." Tears welled in her eyes. "Mecha, I've been treated like nothing for so long. I don't even know how to feel worthy." He stood, took her hand, and knelt before her. "Let me remind you every day." She wept freely now. "Yes," she whispered. He smiled. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Less than a month after being cast aside like refuse, Shalola became the bride of one of Nigeria's most powerful men. No media frenzy, no lavish spectacle. Just a seaside chapel, a string quartet, Mama O in tears, and a barefoot orphan girl scattering rose petals as Shalola walked down the aisle. And Mecha stood at the altar, his heart full, not because of what she had survived, but because of who she had become. His wife, his miracle, his treasure risen from the dust. Mecha believed in quiet justice, the kind that didn't need headlines. But one evening he noticed Shalola pause before a mirror, fingers brushing the scar near her eye. The weight she carried was still visible. That night he summoned his lawyer. "I want to buy a property, a duplex on Victoria Island. Find out who owns Bio's building." Within 48 hours the paperwork was complete. "It's owned by a Lebanese investor," the lawyer explained. "He's ready to sell. Offer him full price," Mecha said. "Transfer it into Shkolola's name." Days later, Bio received a notice to vacate. "What nonsense is this?" He shouted at the house manager. "The property has been sold. The new landlord will speak with you about relocation." The manager replied coolly. A meeting was arranged. Bio walked into the conference room disheveled, reeking of stale beer. Months had not been kind, demoted at his father's company, broke, abandoned. And there she was, Shkolola, dressed with quiet confidence, radiant, nothing like the woman he once discarded. "You're the new landlord?" he asked, stunned. She nodded calmly. "Yes." He blinked, speechless. "You have 30 days to leave," she said. "But I'm giving you 2 weeks. You're doing this to disgrace me. To get revenge." She held his gaze. "If I wanted revenge, I wouldn't be sitting here. I learned from you to stop staying where I'm not respected." His head lowered, words failing him. "Bio," she added softly, "I forgive you. But your cruelty no longer belongs in my life." Outside, Bio stumbled into the sunlight, stripped of everything he thought he controlled. His house, his power, even her silence, gone. No one was coming to rescue him. Back in the room, Shalola whispered a prayer, not of victory, but of release. Justice had spoken, not through fists or fire, but through a deed in her name. That night, Bio dragged a suitcase to his father's Banana Island mansion. His account was nearly empty. Friends had abandoned him. His job was gone. All that remained was pride, and even that was breaking. When he pressed the buzzer, shoulders slumped, the security guard looked at him with hesitation before making a call. A few minutes later, Chief Femi stepped out, arms folded, disappointment etched across his face. "Daddy," Bo began, but his father silenced him with a wave of his hand. "Go home." "I don't have a home. You had one, and you destroyed it." Bo lowered his voice. "Please just let me stay here for a while. I'll figure things out." Chief Femi shook his head. "I warned you. I gave you everything. Yet you chose to humiliate a woman who only wanted your respect. She forgave you, but you still discarded her. Your cruelty has ruined you, You're no longer welcome under my roof. The gates closed quietly. No shouting, no fight, only silence. That night, Bo found himself in a rundown guest house on the mainland. No electricity, no fan, just a creaking mattress and the sound of rats above. He lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, hearing Shalola's voice on repeat. I don't want revenge. I just want peace. The very peace he denied her now haunted him. Across the city, peace had taken root. Shalola stood on a polished stage in the garden of the Akoi mansion she now called home. Fairy lights sparkled overhead. Guests filled the courtyard, women, survivors, donors, friends. Beside her stood Mecha, his hand resting gently on her back. Behind her hung a banner, Grand Opening of the Amara Haven, a shelter for women in crisis. Taking the microphone, her voice steady yet warm, she spoke. There was a time I believed suffering in silence was noble, that endurance made me a good woman, that being beaten, humiliated, and abandoned was my burden to carry. But I've learned something. No one deserves to be treated as worthless. No one should be discarded because they lack family or power. Women are not property. We are not disposable. She paused, then continued. And that is why this home exists. So no woman will ever have to sleep on a doorstep in the rain, wondering if she matters. The crowd erupted in applause. Mecha kissed her forehead and together they cut the ribbon. Laughter, joy, and tears filled the air. Cameras flashed, but more than that, healing was present. Later that night, sitting in the quiet garden, Mecha looked at her. You changed everything. No, she said, resting her head on his shoulder. I just refused to stay broken. At that moment, Mecha knew he hadn't married a victim. He had married a woman who rose from cruelty's ashes and used them to light a fire that would warm others. Meanwhile, Bo watched the ceremony on a borrowed phone, sitting on the pavement near a bus terminal. His name wasn't mentioned, but his shame was clear. 6 months later, the High Court of Lagos granted Shalola an uncontested divorce. Bo never appeared, sent no lawyer, and ignored the petition. The marriage was dissolved in less than 15 minutes. When the judge declared, "You are now free," Shalola smiled, not with triumph, but with quiet release. It was the smile of someone who had survived. She walked out into a bright Lagos morning, the sky painted with gold. Mecha waited outside in a gray caftan, his eyes full of pride. It's done, she whispered. Yes, he replied, taking her hand. Now we begin again, and begin again. They did. Shalola donated the rental profits from her former duplex, the prison she once lived in, to create a vocational training center for women escaping domestic violence. The facility offered tailoring, baking, hairdressing, and even technology courses. She turned pain into purpose. One of the first beneficiaries was Wura, a former taxi driver who lost everything after leaving an abusive marriage. Now she was the official driver for Amara Haven. Her first task, picking up women who had nowhere else to go, just as Shalola once did. The initiative soon made headlines across Nigeria, from beaten to builder, how one woman's pain sparked a movement. Shalola declined interviews. Her work spoke for itself. Somewhere in Surulere, Bo sat beneath a rusted zinc shelter outside a roadside bar, nursing a plastic cup of palm wine. His beard unkempt, shoes worn, and his phone disconnected. When he saw a newspaper photo of Mecha and Shalola launching another shelter in Abuja, he looked away. Regret, when it arrived, didn't scream. It whispered, "You could have had a queen. You treated her like dust." One Saturday morning, Shalola returned to her old street, not as the discarded wife, but as a guest of honor at a community seminar. She faced young girls, some with hidden bruises, others with searching eyes. "I was once told obedience meant silence," she said softly. "But today I stand here not because I obeyed cruelty, but because I walked away from it." The girls clapped. Some cried. Shalola smiled, not because she was finally free, but because she had found purpose in her pain. Moral lesson: never allow anyone to define your worth through cruelty. What the world discards, grace can restore. True strength lies not in enduring abuse, but in rising above it, and using your pain to protect and uplift others. We hope this story touched you. Share your lessons and reflections in the comments. We truly enjoy reading them. And remember, another powerful story is coming in a few days. Subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you won't miss it. If this story moved you, like the video and share it with your loved ones.